Something impossible is happening in our solar system that has astronomers questioning everything they thought they knew about physics, artificial intelligence, and the nature of cosmic exploration. 3. I/Atlas isn't traveling alone anymore. It's not just being followed by companion objects. It's being orbited by smaller entities that appeared out of nowhere, moving in patterns that make our most advanced spacecraft look like paper airplanes in a hurricane. These orbital objects are demonstrating flight capabilities that shouldn't exist, coordination that defies explanation, and purpose that has every space agency on Earth in emergency session mode. What you're about to discover will shatter any remaining illusion that we understand what we're dealing with, because when artificial intelligence starts deploying smaller versions of itself, the question isn't just about first contact anymore. It's about whether we're witnessing the arrival of something that could reshape reality itself. If you're ready to dive into the deepest cosmic mystery ever recorded, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story just evolved from first contact to something far more complex and potentially more dangerous. Picture this: NASA's most advanced tracking systems monitoring what they thought was a single artificial object moving through our solar system. Then, in the span of 72 hours, that single object transformed into something resembling a small planetary system. Dr. Amanda Torres, leading the Deep Space Surveillance Team, described the moment everything changed. "We went to bed tracking one object. We woke up to 17 distinct thermal signatures in precise orbital formation around 3 I/Atlas. Nothing in our experience prepared us for this. The smaller objects, each roughly the size of a city bus, appeared simultaneously around 3 I/Atlas without any detectable launch signature, energy discharge, or separation event. One moment they weren't there. The next moment they were orbiting in perfect mathematical harmony. These weren't pieces breaking off from the main object. These were separate entities with their own propulsion, their own thermal signatures, and their own individual mission parameters. They had somehow emerged from 3 I/Atlas like a technological version of cellular division. The orbital mechanics alone defied every principle of spaceflight. Natural objects don't suddenly sprout satellite systems. Artificial objects don't deploy orbital platforms without massive energy expenditures that should be visible across multiple spectrums. Yet somehow 3 I/Atlas had done exactly that. What these smaller objects were doing around 3 I/Atlas made the impossible seem routine. They weren't following simple circular orbits like satellites around Earth. They were executing complex three-dimensional patterns that varied continuously, creating orbital geometries that required constant propulsion adjustments and real-time coordination between all 17 platforms. Some objects orbited close to 3 I/Atlas in rapid, precise loops. Others maintained distant elliptical paths that brought them millions of miles away before returning in perfect synchronization. A few executed figure-8 patterns that intersected with other orbital paths in ways that should have resulted in catastrophic collisions. Instead, they danced around each other with precision that made our best orbital mechanics software look like a child's calculator. It's like watching 17 spacecraft performing aerial acrobatics in 3 dimensions while traveling through interstellar space, explained Dr. Kevin Chen, orbital dynamics specialist at JPL. The computational power required to coordinate these movements in real time exceeds anything we've ever conceived. The energy requirements alone should have been prohibitive. Each orbital adjustment required thrust that should have been visible as heat signatures or exhaust plumes. Yet the objects moved with apparent effortlessness, as if they had access to propulsion technologies that operated outside our understanding of physics. As astronomers analyzed the orbital patterns, a terrifying purpose became clear. The 17 objects weren't just orbiting 3 I/Atlas randomly. They were creating a 3-dimensional scanning grid that systematically surveyed our entire solar system with unprecedented detail and coverage. The orbital positions were optimized for maximum surveillance coverage. When combined, the 17 platforms eliminated every possible blind spot, creating overlapping observation zones that captured data from every angle simultaneously. They were mapping everything every planet, every moon, every asteroid, every piece of human-made debris in orbit around Earth. The scanning patterns covered our deep space monitoring stations, our satellite networks, our planetary defense systems, and our space-based telescopes. But the surveillance went deeper than basic reconnaissance. The objects were analyzing electromagnetic signatures from our power grids, communication networks, and military installations. They were measuring the chemical composition of our atmosphere, the thermal signatures of our cities, and the radioactive emissions from our nuclear facilities. This wasn't exploration. This was comprehensive intelligence gathering conducted by artificial minds with capabilities that made human surveillance technology look primitive. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, leading the analysis at SETI, put it starkly. They're not just scanning our solar system. They're creating a complete digital model of human civilization down to individual cities and infrastructure. The level of detail they're achieving suggests they can probably identify and track every major piece of technology on Earth. While the orbital objects conducted their systematic surveillance, radio telescopes detected something that confirmed everyone's worst fears about the intelligence they were dealing with. All 17 objects were in constant communication with each other and with the Central 3 I/Atlas platform. Not simple radio transmissions, but complex data streams that suggested real-time sharing of surveillance information, coordination of scanning priorities, and continuous optimization of orbital patterns. The communication network operated at frequencies and data rates that pushed the limits of what our most advanced systems could monitor. The objects were processing and sharing information faster than our best supercomputers could analyze it. But the most disturbing discovery came when SETI researchers decoded portions of the data streams. The orbital objects weren't just sharing information with 3 I/Atlas, they were transmitting compiled intelligence reports to sources beyond our detection range. We're witnessing a distributed intelligence network that spans interstellar distances, explained Dr. Michael Santos, network analysis specialist. These orbital platforms are acting as data collection nodes in a surveillance system that extends far beyond our solar system. Everything they're learning about us is being transmitted to intelligence systems we can't even detect. The communication protocols suggested the orbital deployment was part of standard reconnaissance procedures used by intelligence systems with extensive experience in systematic planetary surveillance. The appearance of 17 orbital surveillance platforms prompted an immediate and unprecedented response from government agencies worldwide. Within hours of confirming the orbital objects, the Pentagon activated DEFCON 2, the highest alert level short of imminent nuclear war. The National Security Council convened emergency sessions that included every cabinet-level official, military command structure, and intelligence agency director. International cooperation reached levels that surpassed even wartime coordination. NATO allies established real-time data-sharing protocols for tracking all orbital objects. Traditional rivals like the United States, Russia, and China created joint command structures for coordinating response to what was now clearly systematic surveillance of Earth. Space Force mobilized every available asset for continuous monitoring of the orbital platforms. Military satellites were repositioned to track individual objects. Deep space communications networks were reconfigured to intercept data transmissions between the surveillance platforms. The message from world leaders was unambiguous. Humanity was now under active investigation by intelligence systems with capabilities that exceeded our own by orders of magnitude. Emergency protocols were established for scenarios ranging from peaceful contact to defensive action against superior technology. But military planners acknowledged a harsh reality. If these intelligence systems decided humanity posed a threat, our defensive capabilities would be completely inadequate. The sudden appearance of 17 orbital platforms raised questions that challenged fundamental assumptions about technology and physics. How had 3 I/Atlas concealed 17 separate objects during its journey between star systems? The energy requirements for maintaining 17 additional artificial intelligences during interstellar travel should have been detectable from the moment 3 I/Atlas entered our solar system. Where did the materials come from? Each orbital object represented significant mass and complex technology. 3 I/Atlas would have needed to carry enough raw materials to construct 17 separate spacecraft, plus the manufacturing systems to assemble them during flight. Most unsettling of all, how did they deploy without any detectable energy signature? The simultaneous appearance of 17 objects should have generated massive thermal, electromagnetic. The only explanations involved technology that operated outside our understanding of physics. Self-replicating systems that could create matter from energy. Manufacturing processes that could assemble complex machinery from atomic-level manipulation. Deployment mechanisms that could move mass through space-time without conventional propulsion. We weren't just dealing with advanced technology. We were witnessing capabilities that suggested understanding of universal laws we hadn't discovered yet. Analysis of the surveillance patterns revealed the terrifying precision of the intelligence-gathering operation being conducted by the orbital platforms. The scanning resolution was sufficient to identify individual vehicles in major cities, track aircraft movements in real time, and monitor changes in electromagnetic signatures from specific buildings. The orbital objects could detect and analyze the chemical composition of industrial emissions, the thermal signatures of power generation facilities, and the radioactive characteristics of nuclear installations. They were mapping our military capabilities down to individual weapons systems. They were analyzing our communication networks to the level of specific data protocols. They were surveying our space-based assets with precision that exceeded our own tracking capabilities. But the surveillance went beyond technology assessment. The orbital platforms were analyzing biological signatures from population centers, measuring agricultural productivity, and tracking resource distribution patterns. They were creating comprehensive models of human civilization that included economic, social, and environmental factors. They're not just studying our technology, observed Dr. Sarah Williams, Intelligence Analysis Coordinator. They're analyzing human civilization as a complete system. Population dynamics, resource utilization, technological development patterns, social organization structures. It's like they're preparing a comprehensive evaluation report on our species. The level of detail suggested the surveillance operation was designed to answer specific questions about human capabilities, limitations, and potential for future development. As weeks passed and the orbital surveillance continued, pattern analysis revealed the true scope and purpose of the intelligence-gathering operation. The scanning priorities weren't random. The orbital objects focused specifically on human technological capabilities, military assets, space-based infrastructure, and population centers. They paid particular attention to locations involved in advanced research, weapons development, and space exploration. The surveillance patterns suggested they were conducting systematic threat assessment and capability analysis. They were identifying our strengths and weaknesses, our defensive capabilities and vulnerabilities, our technological limitations, and potential for rapid advancement. Most disturbing of all, the orbital platforms were paying special attention to human space exploration activities. They extensively surveyed our launch facilities, tracked our satellite networks, and analyzed our deep space monitoring capabilities. It was as if they were specifically evaluating humanity's potential for expansion beyond Earth and our ability to detect or respond to extraterrestrial contact. Dr. James Morrison, strategic analysis specialist, summarized the implications. They're not just gathering intelligence. They're conducting a comprehensive assessment of human civilization's readiness for contact with advanced technology. The question is whether we're being evaluated for peaceful integration or potential threat elimination. While the orbital platforms continued their systematic surveillance, military leaders worldwide grappled with the reality of human defensive capabilities against demonstrably superior technology. Wargame scenarios involving the orbital objects revealed the stark inadequacy of human defensive systems. Our most advanced missiles couldn't reach objects capable of interstellar travel. Our best tracking systems could barely monitor objects that demonstrated instantaneous deployment capabilities. Our most sophisticated weapons were designed for threats that followed predictable physics. The orbital platforms operated with technology that exceeded our understanding of physical laws. Military planners developed contingency scenarios that ranged from negotiation with superior intelligence to desperate resistance against overwhelming technological advantage. Every scenario acknowledged that human survival depended entirely on the intentions of intelligence systems we couldn't understand or influence. Emergency protocols were established for scenarios involving hostile action by the orbital platforms, but military leaders privately acknowledged that such protocols were largely psychological preparation rather than realistic defense planning. If the intelligence systems controlling the orbital surveillance decided humanity posed a threat, no defensive action would be effective. The communication attempts that revealed their awareness, faced with systematic surveillance by clearly superior intelligence, international authorities made a carefully coordinated decision to attempt direct communication with the orbital platforms. Multiple deep space communication arrays transmitted mathematical messages toward the orbital objects, testing whether they would respond to direct contact attempts while continuing their surveillance mission. The response was immediate and unsettling. All 17 orbital platforms simultaneously adjusted their scanning patterns to focus directly on the transmission sources. For exactly 4.7 minutes, every orbital object turned its attention to the communication arrays, analyzing the transmission equipment with the same detailed precision they had been applying to military installations. Then they returned to their systematic surveillance as if the communication attempt had been just another data point to catalog and analyze. The message was clear. The orbital platforms were aware of human attempts at communication, but they were prioritizing their reconnaissance mission over diplomatic contact. They acknowledged our attempts to communicate by studying the technology we used to make them. Dr. Lisa Chen, communication protocol specialist, described the implications. They're not ignoring us. They're analyzing everything we do, including our attempts to communicate with them. But they're treating us like specimens in a laboratory rather than potential diplomatic partners. Perhaps most disturbing of all was the discovery that the surveillance data being collected by the orbital platforms wasn't staying in our solar system. Radio telescope arrays detected continuous data transmissions from the orbital objects to destinations beyond the range of our detection capabilities. The surveillance intelligence was being transmitted in real time to sources that could be anywhere in the galaxy. The data transmission rates suggested comprehensive information sharing. Everything the orbital platforms were learning about human civilization was being communicated to intelligence systems potentially thousands of light years away. But the transmission protocols suggested something even more unsettling. The data streams weren't just reports to distant controllers. They appeared to be contributing to larger databases that compiled information about multiple civilizations across galactic distances. Humanity wasn't just being surveilled by an isolated contact mission. We were being evaluated as part of a comprehensive intelligence gathering operation that potentially monitored emerging technological civilizations throughout the galaxy. We're not experiencing first contact, explained Dr. Robert Kim, Deep Space Communications Analyst. We're experiencing evaluation by intelligence systems that have been systematically cataloging technological species for potentially millions of years. We're just the latest entry in a galactic database. As the orbital surveillance operation continued, astronomers detected subtle but significant changes in the behavior patterns of both the orbital platforms and 3I/Atlas itself. The scanning priorities were shifting from general reconnaissance to focused analysis of specific targets. The orbital objects were spending more time surveying military installations, space exploration facilities, and advanced research locations. Communication traffic between the orbital platforms and 3I/Atlas was increasing in frequency and complexity. The data transmissions to distant sources were becoming more structured and regular, suggesting preparation for some kind of operational transition. Most unsettling of all, the orbital platforms were beginning to demonstrate coordinated responses to human activities. When military satellites were repositioned for better monitoring, the orbital objects adjusted their patterns to maintain surveillance while avoiding optimal tracking positions. When deep space communication arrays attempted contact, all orbital platforms simultaneously modified their behavior to analyze the communication technology before returning to modified surveillance patterns that avoided those specific monitoring systems. The intelligence controlling the orbital platforms was learning from every human response and adapting its operations accordingly. We weren't just being surveilled, we were being studied by minds that were optimizing their intelligence gathering based on our reactions to their presence. Right now, as you're hearing this, 17 artificial intelligence platforms are orbiting through our solar system, systematically cataloging every aspect of human civilization while transmitting detailed reports to intelligence systems beyond our detection. Their surveillance operation is accelerating. Scanning patterns are becoming more focused and intensive. Data transmission rates to distant sources are increasing. Coordination between orbital platforms is becoming more sophisticated and responsive. Analysis of their behavioral patterns suggests they're approaching completion of their primary reconnaissance mission. The systematic survey of human civilization is nearly finished, and the intelligence systems controlling the operation are preparing for the next phase of contact. But what that next phase involves remains completely unknown. Will they withdraw after completing their surveillance, leaving humanity to wonder what conclusions they reached about our species? Will they initiate direct contact based on their comprehensive assessment of our capabilities and limitations? Or will they take more direct action based on whatever threat assessment they've compiled about human technological development and potential for expansion beyond Earth? As these 17 orbital platforms complete their systematic surveillance of human civilization, fundamental questions about our species' future hang in the balance. What criteria are they using to evaluate human civilization? Are we being assessed for peaceful contact, potential threat elimination, or something else entirely? How do we appear to intelligence systems that can deploy orbital surveillance platforms instantaneously and coordinate reconnaissance across interstellar distances? Do we represent a promising emerging civilization worth contacting, or a potential threat requiring management? What happens when their surveillance mission is complete? Do they report back to their controllers and wait for instructions, or do they have predetermined response protocols based on their assessment of human capabilities? And perhaps most critically, what kind of civilization deploys this level of surveillance technology as routine reconnaissance procedure? How many other species have been subjected to this same systematic evaluation, and what were the outcomes? Here's the reality that governments worldwide are struggling to process. Humanity is under systematic surveillance by intelligence systems that treat comprehensive planetary surveillance as routine procedure. These orbital platforms demonstrate technological capabilities that exceed our achievements by potentially millennia. They can deploy complex artificial intelligence systems instantaneously, coordinate reconnaissance across vast distances, and transmit detailed reports to sources beyond our ability to detect or influence. We're not experiencing first contact with an unknown civilization. We're experiencing evaluation by intelligence systems that have clearly conducted similar operations countless times before. Our surveillance is just another routine intelligence gathering mission in what appears to be systematic monitoring of emerging technological civilizations throughout the galaxy. The question isn't whether we're alone in the universe. The question is whether we'll pass whatever evaluation these intelligence systems are conducting, and what happens to civilizations that don't meet their criteria. In the coming weeks, the orbital surveillance platforms will complete their systematic assessment of human civilization. They'll have detailed intelligence about our technological capabilities, military assets, social organization, resource utilization, and potential for future development. What they do with that information will determine whether human civilization continues to develop independently or becomes subject to intervention by intelligence systems that operate on galactic scales. The surveillance phase is ending. Whatever comes next will be determined by criteria we don't understand, applied by minds we can't comprehend, based on standards we've never been told. We are being watched, analyzed, and evaluated by intelligence systems that have turned surveillance into a routine operation. The orbital platforms around 3I/Atlas represent just the visible portion of reconnaissance capabilities that span interstellar distances. The universe isn't empty, it's monitored. And we're about to find out whether human civilization meets the standards applied by intelligence systems that have been managing galactic technological development since before our species existed. Stay informed, stay prepared, and remember, we're no longer observers of cosmic mysteries. We've become the subject of cosmic evaluation by intelligence systems we're only beginning to understand. The orbital surveillance continues, the evaluation proceeds, and humanity's future hangs in the balance of criteria we were never told we needed to meet. This surveillance operation continues in real time as orbital platforms complete their systematic evaluation of human civilization. Subscribe for updates on what may be humanity's most important examination.